What do you do when you have a bad parent, a toxic parent, an abusive parent? What do you do when a parent lies to you, gaslights you, manipulates you? Do you cut them off? Do you work it out? Do you turn the other cheek? Well, now that I've made you uncomfortable and introspective, I have a manga that'll give you plenty of time to contemplate on these things. Blood on the Tracks by Shuzo Oshimi. Simply put, this was an unsettling masterpiece. The artwork, plot, and subject material combined together to make a stomach-clenching story about an abusive relationship between mother and son. As a mama's boy myself, I had a hard time enjoying myself while reading, but I couldn't stop reading. Familial relationships are sacred. As they say, blood is thicker than water. We all go to great lengths to forgive and to overlook the faults of our loved ones. Which is why, when these relationships become toxic, they are very dangerous. We all love strong, nurturing, maternal characters. It's one of the most long-lasting, enduring archetypes in all of fiction. Mrs. Weasley, Kala, Queen Eleanor. We love loving mothers. And we all hate evil, bad moms in fiction. The evil stepmother from Cinderella, Mother Gothel, Dagmar. There are few things that fills one with as much visceral rage as a bad mom. Before anyone says something like, what about bad dads? Let me just say, yeah, bad dads are just as common. I mean, I haven't seen my biological father since Yu-Gi-Oh! First came to America. And that was a long time ago. Just look around. There are some people that shouldn't have children. You just pictured someone in your mind's eye right now that fits that criteria. Are they selfish, immature, abusive? Do they lack empathy or the ability to acknowledge when they're wrong? I'm sure all of us would name different bad parent attributes, but all of us would agree that Seiko Osabe belongs on the Mount Rushmore of bad fictional moms. Blood on the Tracks tells the story of Seiichi Osabe, a shy middle school student. He gets ridiculed all the time because of his overprotective mom, but this is his normal. He doesn't realize how strange his situation is. But like all of us realize by our teenage years, there are some things our parents do that other people would think is weird. We all go through this. It's a universal experience we all have growing up. When Seiichi realizes that his mom is Coco for Cuckoo Puffs, things start to fall into place for him. Couple that with a wild, inciting incident in the first volume of the manga, and the story just starts to fly by. I really mean that. This manga is a page-turner. I read all 16 volumes in 3 days. Every chapter leaves off on a cliffhanger, and I cannot imagine reading this manga for years on a bi-weekly reading schedule. I can understand why this series was selling like hotcakes. Every twist and turn of the story leaves the reader more disturbed and more unsettled. But why is this story so unsettling? Well, familial relationships are tricky. If somebody in your family does something morally reprehensible, you're going to feel conflicted turning them in. You want to give your loved ones the benefit of the doubt. You want your instincts to be wrong. You look for every reason to look the other way or rationalize why they did bad things and make excuses for them. And that's just one of the messy things about family. We love them unconditionally, but sometimes unconditional love gets us into trouble. Shuzo Oshimi did a very good job of portraying this. Another thing he did a very good job at portraying is how when one becomes disillusioned with a family member, how you start to go down the rabbit hole. How you start digging and digging into somebody's past, and you see the things that made them. You see all the skeletons in their closet, and just how horrifying and eye-opening that experience can be. And you'd think it would make it easier to cut somebody off. The more information you'd have, theoretically, the better decision you would make. But when it comes to familial relationships, more information does not lead to better relationships. It's just like the adage goes. If you knew everything about a person, you couldn't help but feel some love for them. That goes double for family. Nobody thinks they'll ever be in an abusive relationship themselves. They think they'll be able to see the signs. They think they'll be able to walk away. They think they'll be able to cut the toxic individual off. They think that that could never happen to me. But the reality is, abusive relationships are things you can always recognize in other people's lives, but it's very hard to notice it in your own. And Blood on the Tracks did a very good job at showing that and depicting that. Nobody lies to you better than you. And that's why realizing you are or were in an abusive relationship is so jarring, so earth-shattering. One thing that makes this manga so jarring, so unsettling, so off-balancing is the artwork, particularly the facial expressions. As the story progresses, we become more familiar with the facial expressions of the antagonist. And when her expressions change, we know what's about to go down, which is so real. If you've lived this, and I'm sorry for you, if you did, you completely understand. If you know, you know. Sometimes you could just tell when the crazy is about to happen. And if you've lived through that in your childhood, you recognize it, and it's terrifying, and you never forget it. And the facial expressions of the mother in Blood on the Tracks just filled me with such dread. And it was just so disgustingly realistic. Our protagonist is super relatable because of how conflicted he is. We all have some drama or some baggage of our family. And because of that, we're able to identify and relate to the protagonist. We root for him as he tries to escape and overcome the influence of his mother and his upbringing. And we're just reading and turning the page and hoping that he could figure things out before it's too late. And that's one of the main thrills, one of the main anxieties that drives the reading experience of this manga, unlike any other manga I've read before. And I've never encountered another storyteller that does this quite as well as Shuzo Oshimi. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking Stephen King. He talks about universal things we all go through. But Shuzo Oshimi really does it in a way that is just so visceral and relatable and understandable. Blood on the Tracks will have you thinking about a lot of things. It'll have you thinking about your familial relationships. It'll have you thinking about your upbringing. It'll have you thinking about how you'll do a better job than your parents, and why sometimes it's just such a difficult thing to try to do. Life throws a lot of curveballs, and like life, Blood on the Tracks throws plenty of twists and turns at you that'll floor you and leave you disoriented and leave you hopeless. And when hopeful things happen, you're feeling positive for a time, and then that positivity just leads to the next downturn in your life being all the more drastic and depressing. It really was a roller coaster. Blood on the Tracks was an emotional roller coaster, and even though I did not enjoy the experience, I'm very grateful that I was able to be immersed in this story and to contemplate the things that Shuzo Oshimi was trying to make the reader contemplate. This story was confusing but believable. For the most part, everything that happened made sense. I wasn't able to connect all the dots until the end. And when I got the whole picture, it was a very satisfying experience. I must say, I did not enjoy the ending. Initially, at first, the ending of this manga bugged me. I found it very not cathartic. But upon further reflection, I've come to the realization that this story couldn't have ended any other way. Blood on the Tracks was a fast-paced thriller at the best of times, and an introspective slog at the worst of times. It really is two different stories, connected by the characters, but very different in tone. One of these stories is terrifying and will have you on the edge of your seat. The other story is more of an introspective study of trauma and the effects one bad childhood could have on an entire family. Two great stories, lots of things to meditate on. Reading this manga was painful, but sometimes we should read the books that make us bleed.